What's going on, guys? Skyhound, also known as Geek Detective Pierce. So, I'm going to try and keep this quick, non spoiler review as simple as I can. But before I get into the nitty gritty of it, I need to address a few things. Number one, this does bring up the whole use and misuse of the multiverse. And there are some people who don't understand how this works, not just as a literary telling device, but also in writing in general. Now, that part out of the way, I need to also address the hypocrisy of so called fans when it came to the fact that when Once and Always was being released, idiots on social media made dumb assumptions about Amy Jo Johnson and the reason why she wasn't in it. If you weren't going to respect her decisions as to why she wasn't in it, and she has her reasons, which I respect, then you really don't know how it is to be a fan and respect not just other people's opinions, but assume that your so called takes are actually facts. There is a difference between opinion and fundamental facts. With that out of the way, let me get to the main points that I want to talk about. This is only issue number one. Is it trying to lay down the groundwork in terms of what this what if scenario is presenting? Yes, it is in an alternate universe, which is part of a multiverse. It is not canon. And every time you have an idiot that tries to make something stupid and irrelevant canon, it just proves you have a fat ego. Not sorry, not apologizing. So, for any idiot that tries to comment, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Dude, I was around in the 90s. You didn't have this fancy tech like you do now. You weren't even around when it started. Either you were a teenager or you were a kid when this began. If you can't do the simple mathematics of that, then you are the ones that don't know what you're talking about. You know why? Because you can't handle facts. Now, the tribute to Twee was nice, as well as Trini. I like that part. There is something I have to point out here, and I'll get to that right about now. Give me one moment. I do like how it also addresses some people that are no longer with us. That's one of the things that the first issue did bring up. However, before I get to that, I want to also give a quick shout out to Austin St. John, as he pointed out to me when I was asking him about the late Richard Janelle. Of course, I also asked Walter, Karen, and Catherine Sutherland, what do they remember about the man? And Austin St. John also weighed in when I asked him about it because I had to reference meeting up with those three at Comic Con Revolution last year, and I attended the anniversary panel. But with that part being said, I have to point out um, since Richard Janelle is also no longer with us, I like that they, show him in the comic. And if you guys want, some sort of perspective in terms of, what the actors thought of him, you're going to have to look around. But I will eventually be putting in, you know, a vlog on some of my convention adventures, of which Comic Con Revolution is one of them. But with that out of the way, I want to point out that I also like the discussion that turns into a heated debate between Billy, Zach, and, before I forget, Emma, because that is what Kim calls herself in this one. And the issue of using the grid for something that it is not intended to be used. Now, this concept, while admirable, does bring up obvious questions. Sounds like a decent concept. It is a what if scenario in an alternate universe. However, the problem when you don't know how multiverse is utilized, understanding rules and regulations, and then outright disregarding it just to let your ego run free. That tells me you don't know how to write. You don't know how characterization works. You may have played a character, but sometimes there are writers who understand things that actors do not. However, to counter this brings up the obvious question: would this have happened? Would Power Rangers have happened had it not been for Haim Saban and their attempts, as well as Stan Lee's attempts? God rest that man's soul. If they didn't push for it, the answer is obvious. I know the answer. Ranger fans know this answer, excluding the ones that pretend to be fans. But the answer is fundamental and obvious. We wouldn't be able to be talking about these characters if it wasn't for them. True. But again, had it not been for Haim Saban and his push, we wouldn't be talking about Power Rangers. However, are there ones who were around during the Disney era and likely don't know the Saban era? Absolutely. Depends on who you ask. Now, the issues that's being explored. Do I think it's an admirable take? Yes. Did I already know that they were going to be referencing someone that is no longer with us? Absolutely. Because prior to getting this whole thing, I already recalled what happened when I heard the news of JDF no longer being with us. And I was in shock. I was in denial. I was asked about it by a relative of mine. He then pointed out to me the posts from some of the Rangers themselves, and I was like, either someone's playing a joke or this is real. And I waited until official news pointed it out. And yeah, it's rough. However, I'll state it again. Austin St. John pointed this out to me when I asked him the question. We lost a lot of people, not just Twee and JDF. As sad as it is, As memorable as MMPR is, we lost a lot of people. Richard Janelle, who played Ernie. I know there are some of you who liked his character. I liked his character, and he was just a supporting role. Again, we lost a lot. There's even that one actor, I forgot his name. He played Locke in the last two Matrix films, or at least the third one. That guy was the master in Jungle Fury. For those of you guys who like Jungle Fury, you know who I'm talking about, especially if you've watched The Matrix. There are individuals who were part of this franchise that are no longer with us. Heck, I'll state it right now. I myself am doing research on trying to find these other people that are no longer with us. On top of that, do I have to point out Michiko Soga, who played Bandora, the Japanese counterpart for Ranger, which started Power Rangers? She's the one who played that character, as well as the character in Magi Ranger, who in the English version is referred to as Mystic Mother. She played both of those characters. Again, I have to point out media history and the past because some people are blind and illiterate mentally. We lost a lot of people. As admirable as it is that you guys like Jason David Frank and Twee, I myself also like them as well. You can't just focus on two. You're looking at it through a rose tinted lens. I'll say it again. You are looking at it the wrong way. You always will. And you also proved the hypocrisy that myself and others have been saying for years. Do I think Amy Jo Johnson is doing an admirable attempt at trying to create closure? To an extent, yes. Good for her. And frankly, I'll put more context here. There is a specific reason, and I know she brought this up once somewhere. I'll have to look it up. There is a specific reason why she didn't want to do acting anymore. She wanted to do something else, which is great, which is why eventually she was in a particular series that was filmed over in Canada. Those of you guys who know that show, you know what I'm talking about. She wanted to get into directing and writing. That was her thing. This project of hers is part of that passion. Kudos to her and her decision. And frankly, since I also decided to back it up, I already let her know. I decided to go with the hardcover version of it, in addition to getting a couple more pins. So, for those of you, if you watch my video on how the whole backer kit stuff works, I try to outline it to the best of my ability. I point out what I went with. But yeah, eventually, if I do get a chance to go to one of those conventions again, heaven willing, I do want to at least meet with Amy Jo Johnson, express my gratitude because her story and how, about her mother, as well as getting the part of Power Rangers, I still have that book on my bookshelf. That was back in 2004. 2004. Do the math here, people. This was back when the internet was still barely chugging along, barely even started. and I was in middle school. To have remembered that story for so long, that really helped me during a dark time in my high school years. And her story, Amy Jo Johnson's story of her mother, helped me to gather the strength and courage to deal with what I'm dealing with. And that was just a phase temporarily. Thank heavens it was only temporary. But I just want to let her know, thank you, Amy Jo Johnson, for doing this and also for sharing your story. I just want to just express my gratitude and let her know. And I'm likely to be bringing that book and discussing about it. I really would want to because I know there's a lot of guys who were obviously had a crush on her. I found her cute, but I was more into Trini. And I remembered when I first met Catherine Sutherland at Anime Expo 2009, and I brought it up when we met up last year. It had been so long since we'd seen each other. I discussed a little bit about one particular episode of Power Rangers Zeo, and I told her straight up, I may be a Tomcat fan, but I still respect the Tom Kim fans. If that isn't clear enough, I'm not the one having the problem here. It is you guys that are creating the problem. So if you can't understand what I'm getting at, that is never my problem. But anyway, I'm kind of going past that point. I already gave my general thoughts. Let me know what you guys think of issue number 1 in the comments below if you want. Also, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. I will eventually be going over some seasons of Power Rangers down the line, and I will eventually be putting up a vlog in terms of my convention adventures. So try and stay tuned for that. With that being said, this has been Skyhound, also known as Geek Detective Pierce. Stay safe, stay sane, and as always, stay humble.